Week 8 of the NFL is in the books, and obviously we have some reactions and takeaways, and for those of you who know the drill, let's begin with the Vikings and the Rams on Thursday Night Football. The Rams beat the Vikings 30-20 in an upset, and this is a really good win for the Rams. They got Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back in this game, and that really helped their offense shine against a very good defense. So this is a good win for them to keep pace in the NFC. As for the Vikings, this is a little concerning because, you supposedly have one of the best defenses in the NFL, and you let the Rams absolutely destroy your said defense. I mean, granted, they let Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua come back at short notice, so that could play a factor. But it's still a little concerning that 2 weeks in a row they've been as bad as they have been. And it also sucks that their left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, is going to be out for the year. So that's very unfortunate for the Vikings. So we'll see if they can bounce back from this. And as for that picture right there, that was an uncalled face mask on Sam Darnold that I'm sure a lot of you know about. And it resulted in the Rams getting a safety off of the Vikings, and it should have gotten the Vikings an extra 15 yards on their final drive. I mean, granted, I still don't think it would have mattered. I still think the Rams would have won, but it's still something of note that happened in this game, and I obviously had to include it in my reaction. Alright, our first 1 o'clock game, we have the Packers beating the Jags 30-27, and this is despite Jordan Love missing the last quarter and a half of this game with an injury. And despite him leaving the game, the Packers still managed to win the game, and I think that just goes to show how valuable a backup quarterback is. I mean, granted, they probably should have beat the Jags by a lot more, but they got the job done. And they didn't mess it up despite the setback with the Jordan Love injury, and they're 6-2, and they're on pace to potentially win the NFC North if things go their way. As for the Jags, I mean, let's be honest, this is a rebuilding team, so this is honestly probably the best possible result because you're still losing, which is good for their draft pick that they will be able to use on a higher player, the worse they are. And they were competitive too. That's really all you can ask for when you're a team like this. And they almost won the game. That would have been a huge confidence booster. It would have put them at 3-5, but I think it doesn't really matter. I think their season's over, but it's always nice to be competitive against good teams when you yourself are not a good team. Moving on, we got Tua's first game back since week 2, and they unfortunately couldn't win that game as the Cardinals were able to sneak away with a win 28-27 on a game-winning field goal. And the Cardinals, they're one of those feisty teams where, they're 4-4, and they could make the playoffs. Like, they're not a great team, but they play with so much heart and desire, and that is just, one of the best parts about this team. And this game just showed it. They had no business winning this game, in my opinion. Their defense is terrible, and they had to go against Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle with a healthy Tua. And it's not like Tua had a bad game or anything. He played all right, but they still managed to win the game. So congratulations to Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. And as for the Dolphins, I mean, I gotta be honest, they're done. They're not gonna do anything. Even if Tua has a good season up to this point, now that he's back, I really don't see him winning. If you can't beat a team, if you can't beat a lowly team like the Cardinals at home with a basically fully healthy offense, that just goes to show how bad your defense is. Because I'm not faulting the Dolphins' offense for this one, which is weird to say, but it's true because Tua played well, but their defense sucks. Moving on, we got another team that has a bad defense in the Ravens and Browns. The Ravens being the team with a bad defense because they let the Browns score over 20 points for the first time this season. And Jameis Winston was a starter for the Browns, and their offense looked pretty well. They they looked a hell of a lot better than with Deshaun Watson under center. So it's obviously nice to see, a better human being, a better player under center for the Browns in Jameis Winston. And he had a really good game. He had, I believe, over 330 passing yards, and he was safe-ish with the football. There was one play where Kyle Hamilton could have picked it off, and he didn't. So I don't want to say he was very safe, but he was definitely safe enough to win. And as for the Ravens, I've talked about how bad their defense is, and this is one of those games where these are games they're prone to losing because of how bad their defense is. I still think they're probably the best team in the AFC North, but at the same time, when your defense can't stop the Browns, you've got some real issues, and this team's still a Super Bowl contender, don't get me wrong, but they just need to fix their defense. Their defense fucking sucks. Moving on, we got the Eagles beating the Bengals 37-17, and the Eagles, they've looked really good these past 2 weeks. Granted, it's the Giants and a really bad Bengals defense, but it's good to see that they're taking care of business in the manner that they are. That's really all you can ask for. You can't control who you play, but you can control the result of who you play. And the Eagles are 2-0 in the last 2 weeks, and they're playing some inspired football right now. So congratulations to them. And as for the Bengals, this is kind of like the Ravens. They're like a worse version of the Ravens because at least the Ravens have John Harbaugh, who I think is a solid head coach, but I think Zach Taylor is a terrible head coach. And honestly, I think he should be fired after this game. He might be fired by the time I make this video, but I don't see it happening, but I do think he should be fired. The Bengals' offense didn't look great in this game, but even if they did, does it really matter? They would have probably messed the game up anyway because of how bad their defense is. And, this team, they're 3-5, and they could, I don't know, I don't even think they'll make the playoffs because they just don't look good. At least their defense doesn't look good, and their offense, I thought this would be a game. I still thought the Eagles would win, but I thought the Bengals would at least be competitive because it's not their offense that's a problem, but they, along with their defense, was a big problem in this game. That's why they lost. Moving on, we got a big upset here. We got the Patriots beating the Jets 25-22, and this is the Patriots' first win since week 1 of the NFL season, so it's got to feel good to get a win, when you're a rebuilding team and you can win a game here and there. It always feels good. I did say that it might mess up draft situations, but who the hell cares about that at this very moment? You won a game, and I think Patriots fans are just happy that they beat a division rival. As for the Jets, this is a terrible situation. You're 2-6, you're on a 5-game losing streak, and this was supposed to be a supposed Super Bowl contender at the beginning of the season, and they've made some gambles. They brought in Aaron Rodgers, they brought in Devontae Adams, and they obviously, have a very good defense, but their offense just can't get their shit together. I don't get it. You have such a good set of weapons, and Aaron Rodgers just can't get the job done. And, I can't even really blame Nathaniel Hackett anymore because he's not even doing play calls anymore. I think it's Rodgers. I think he is washed because, there's another offensive coordinator that he likes that's running the team, or at least who's calling the plays, and he's not getting the job done. And that's just Aaron Rodgers. He's washed. He's done. All right, our next game, we have the Texans beating the Colts 23-20. And this was definitely not the best game for Anthony Richardson. He only completed 10 passes and he threw over 30 passes. That just goes to show how inaccurate he was. And I know Colts fans are very frustrated with him, as they should be. He is just, so inaccurate. It's actually ridiculous. Like, I think anyone watching this video right now could probably be a more accurate NFL quarterback than Anthony Richardson. That's how bad it is. And that's honestly not even a joke. Like, that's like actually like being serious. And yeah, the Colts, they need to start Joe Flacco, and they are going to start Joe Flacco. Shane Steichen made the decision to start Joe Flacco, I think a day before I started making this video, so that'll be good for the Colts, because their defense has been playing better. As for the Texans, I mean, it wasn't pretty, but you got the job done. I mean, granted, it was Anthony Richardson, as I kind of talked about already, but, you know, you took care of business, and, you know, 6-2 is better than 5-3, and you would have given up the division lead if you lost this game, but you took care of a division rival who was right on your tail, and I gotta give you congrats for doing that. Moving on, we got the Lions destroying the Titans 52-14, and this is despite Jared Goff throwing less than 100 passing yards, but he really didn't have to. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery just ran the ball and ran the ball and ran the ball and ran the ball and just kept running the ball until the game was over, and it worked because the Titans had no answers for it, which was kind of shocking. I thought it would be a little competitive because the Titans do have a good defense, but they definitely could not stop those two running backs on the Lions. And the Lions, I'm going to be honest, I think they're the best team in the NFL. I don't care that they have a loss. They've been playing so good, like so well. And I think they're the best team in the NFC without question. And they're better than the Chiefs. They're better than the Ravens. They're better than the Bills. They're better than the Texans. Like, this team is dangerous. And it's all because of Dan Campbell and that offense and that defense that is playing inspired football right now. And as for the Titans, I mean, I'm going to be honest, this is one of those games where you kind of knew it was going to happen before the game was played. I mean, you play them, but sometimes you kind of don't have to, and I feel like this was one of those games. I think the Titans would have wished that they just accepted defeat before the game started, so they wouldn't have had to give up 52 points. And yeah, they have the worst record in the AFC, and obviously they're done. And next game, we have the Falcons taking on the Bucs, and they beat the Bucs 31-26. And I gotta give credit to the Falcons where it's due. I doubted them. I thought they were gonna lose this game and, you know, blow an opportunity, but they took care of business. I mean, the Bucs were down Chris Godwin and Mike Evans in this game, so the Falcons should have won the game, and they did. So I can't exactly hate on them for doing that. I mean, all my respect to the Falcons. Kirk Cousins and that offense looked really well in this game, and their defense a little shaky, but they won the game, so that's all that matters. As for the Bucs, I mean, honestly, Baker Mayfield played pretty well considering the circumstance. He didn't have Chris Godwin or Mike Evans, which are his two best wide receivers. And despite that, he still had, I believe, over 300 passing yards. And he almost led this team to a victory because they had a chance at the end of the game to win. They just couldn't capitalize on it. But, I mean, I'm not going to blame Baker Mayfield for this loss. This was really just the defense struggling against a high-flying Falcons offense. And, I mean, this is another one of those games where Todd Bowles just can't play call consistently for the defense. And I think until they fire him, he is going to continue to hinder this team. All right, moving on to our first 4 o'clock game. We have the Chargers beating the Saints 26-8. And this is one of the first games I saw where the Chargers offense actually looked really well. I mean, Justin Herbert had a really good game. J.K. Dobbins had a solid game. I mean, you obviously aren't going to complain about a victory like this. And their defense, which has been good all year, also was good as well. They only allowed 8 points. And honestly, they really only allowed 6 points because 2 of those points were because of a safety. And that's not because of the defense. But yeah, the Chargers, they took care of business against an inferior opponent, an injured inferior opponent. And I got to give credit to them where it's due. And as for the Saints, they're on a 6-game losing streak. They're beat up big time, and they have a head coach who's kind of coaching like he's already fired. Because, I mean, I don't think he's going to be a coach for much longer. Like, he might last the next week, but he's not a good head coach. Dennis Allen, he needs to go. He is the Saints' biggest problem, and until they get rid of him, I really can't take the Saints seriously. And the thing about the Saints is, like, they never want to admit that they need to rebuild and just start over. They want to pretend like they still could, like, make the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. But the reality is they don't have enough talent, and they obviously don't have a good enough head coach to do that anyway. Moving on, we got the Bills beating the Seahawks 31-10, and Josh Allen, he played a really good game. And, I mean, the Seahawks defense hasn't been playing that great this year, but it's still a talented roster, and he avoided turning the ball over again. And Josh Allen, he's playing such clean football this year, it's actually insane. I believe he still has 0 turnovers, or 0 interceptions at least. He might have a fumble, but regardless, that's very impressive considering it's him, a guy who had major turnover problems last season. And, I mean, he's the big reason why the Bills are 6-2. And, I mean, if the Chiefs keep playing the way they are, I mean, I think they have a chance to be the 1 seed because they're not going to win many more games playing the way they have been. But the Bills, they will win a lot more games playing the way they have because they have just been dominating these last 2 weeks. And the Seahawks, I mean, honestly, I didn't expect you guys to win. I thought it might be competitive because of how certain games can be competitive when you don't expect it, but I mean, it's just Geno Smith isn't good enough for your team. Your defense has been massively underperforming, and it's kind of a mess right now. I mean, your best player is Kenneth Walker, and he can't carry this whole team. I mean, you gotta help him out with some defense or some competent quarterback play, but they just haven't been doing that for him. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got the Commanders beating the Bears 18-15 on a last-second Hail Mary. And that is gotta be one of the most exciting ways to ever win a football game you could ask for, a Hail Mary. And they did it. I mean, usually you don't get Hail Marys, so you just gotta enjoy them while they last. But damn, that was exciting to see them get a Hail Mary. And it was a tip ball. It landed right into Noah Brown's hands. And yeah, the Commanders are 6-2. They honestly probably should be 5-3, but I mean, hell, you take wins no matter the circumstance. They got the job done, even though it wasn't pretty. They got the job done. And as for the Bears, I mean, you guys had them beat. You were at them beat. You were up by 3. There was 1 second left, and all you had to do was not give up a 60-yard Hail Mary, and you did just that. You did the one thing. Giving up a Hail Mary has got to be one of the worst possible ways to lose a game. And this would have been huge if you won this game. You would have been 5-2. You would have been tied with the Vikings, who were just undefeated. But the Bears choked. This is a choke job. You can't, I can't even fathom what to say here because they literally didn't allow a touchdown all game until the Hail Mary. The Bears that was bad how they lost. Moving on, we got the Chiefs beating the Raiders 27-20, and the Chiefs are still undefeated, unfortunately, and they actually won this game pretty convincingly, despite what the final score will tell you, because they were up 27-13, and the Raiders scored a garbage time touchdown. So it wasn't like they actually had a competitive game or anything. And yeah, the Chiefs, they just took care of an inferior opponent, and they've just been doing that all season. And that's why they're 7-0. That's why they haven't lost yet. A team hasn't figured out how to beat them, and until they do, they're going to continue to be undefeated. As for the Raiders, I mean, there was opportunity after opportunity for you guys to win this game, and you just didn't do it. Like, they literally picked off Patrick Mahomes and had the ball at the Chiefs' 3, and they literally didn't even score. Like, they didn't get a field goal or anything. Like, that's gotta be, like, some of the worst coaching I've ever seen. Like, how do you not get a touchdown? Like, you have 4 tries to get 3 yards, and you can't do it. And, like, this just goes to show that the Raiders, they're just checked out. They just don't play inspired football anymore because they're just done. They're 2-6. And, I mean, technically no one's eliminated from the playoffs yet, but the Raiders might as well be because they sure as hell are not making the playoffs. They look terrible. Moving on, we got the Broncos beating the Panthers 28-14, and the Broncos were up 28-7 at a point in time, so don't get fooled by that final score. That wasn't exactly part of the actual game, if you get my drift. But, I mean, yeah, the Broncos, they just took care of business. They did essentially what the Chiefs did. They just did what they had to do against a worse team. And, I mean, that's all you can ask for if you're, Broncos fan like myself. And I'm happy with them. They didn't do anything too flashy, but they didn't really need to. I mean, when you're playing against arguably the worst team in the NFL, you can kind of just do whatever, and usually you win. And congratulations to them for doing just that. And as for the Panthers, I mean, hey, at least you only have at least you only have 9 games left, and then you can get to the draft. You might have the first overall pick this year. So that's something, I guess. Bryce Young showed a little bit of flashes, but it's not going to be enough for the Panthers to beat a team like the Broncos. And, there's not a whole lot of direction for this team. I mean, you also still have David Tepper as your head coach, and he's going to go do something crazy like fire Dave Canales immediately, even though it's a bad situation all around. Moving on to our Sunday night game, we got the 49ers beating the Cowboys 30-24. And this game was actually really sketchy for the 49ers in the fourth quarter because they were up, I believe, 30-10, and they just let the Cowboys, they were up 27-10, and they just let the Cowboys start crawling back. And at a point, the Cowboys had the ball down by 6, and they didn't score, but they definitely could have. I mean, the 49ers weren't exactly playing good defense, but the reality is they got the job done. They're 4-4, and they could still win their division. Their division's definitely not that great, but yeah, not the prettiest win, but a win is a win, so can't fault them too much for that. As for the Cowboys, I mean, you had a chance to keep pace to try and keep pace in the NFC East because you would have only been a game behind the Eagles and 2 games behind the Commanders, but now you're 2 games behind the Eagles and 3 games behind the Commanders. And it's just like, I mean, I know the 49ers always have the Cowboys number, but this was an opportunity to show the world that you mean business, and they just couldn't do it. And this just shows how mediocre the Cowboys have been this season. I mean, 3-4 with this roster is pathetic. All right, moving on to our Monday night game, we had the Steelers beating the Giants 26-18, and the Steelers' offense looks pretty good. It was really good in the second half, just like it was against the Jets. And the Giants, I mean, they did their best. They definitely didn't play terrible, but they just had some costly turnovers by Daniel Jones that just didn't result in favorable results, I guess. I don't know. But the reality is, I mean, I think with the real quarterback, the Giants honestly probably would have won this game, or at least been more competitive in this game. And I just think Daniel Jones, this just proves how much of a problem Daniel Jones is on this team. He's holding them back. And there were so many throws in this game where he could have made, and he didn't. And there were so many costly fumbles he had in this game too. He's just holding this team back, and he's gonna get Brian Daboll fired, even though I honestly don't think Brian Daboll's that bad of a head coach. I mean, the fact that they were even competitive with the Steelers was actually kind of impressive on their part. So, yeah, Giants are done, unfortunately. As for the Steelers, I was wrong about Russell Wilson. I said he was the biggest problem on the Steelers, and he is not a problem on the Steelers. He is actually playing very well right now. I mean, granted, it's the Jets and the Giants, but I gotta give him credit. He proved me wrong. And that's going to do it for this video. On Thursday, I'm going to have my Week 9 NFL predictions. And I will see you guys when that video comes out. And be safe. And yeah, do something good, I guess.